Okay, so for expanding aliases, I took a look at using auto hotkey in the previous video. Now in this video, I want to take a look at using something built into Z Shell itself. It's a part of a custom widget that I created for the Z Shell line editor. So when you're typing commands into the command line, this is literally the interface where you can design shortcuts, as we'll see, or in the case of expanding aliases, set up so that if you hit the space key, it'll then expand out the alias if there's one right before that. So it's something you can set up right inside the line editor, and then it's built into Z Shell, which has some advantages, especially in terms of speed and the ability to expand aliases without having to deal with how you delete characters, for example, if you use something like auto hotkey to then paste in whatever you want to expand to. All right, so first up is the source code. And if you take a look at my .files repo out on GitHub, you can follow along. Inside of here, if you look for a file with the word alias in the name, you find a few matches. The match here with the _2 expanding aliases.zshell, that's the one you'll want to look at. Okay, so there are two central pieces to the ealias framework. The first is, how do I define an alias? In other words, if I want DCR, I want that to map to Docker container run. I have to call something like ealias, DCR, and then Docker container run. I pass each parameter. So that's the definition. And then when it comes time to use the alias, that means I'm sitting there at the command line typing in DCR, and then I hit the space key. At that point in time, I want that to expand out into Docker container run. So there's defining, and then there's using. All right, so first up, I've got 4 examples of how to use this. So these would be the definitions, and then the function ealias, which performs the definition. Most of this you can skip over because it involves advanced features that we don't need to talk about right now. The key part is that if you come down to the bottom of this function, you'll see that under the hood, I'm just calling alias, and then I'm passing the alias definition. An alias definition is basically that foo equals bar you saw up above. And actually, I should say this is the general use case without the advanced features applied. Once I've done that a little bit further down, I put the name of the alias into a list. So that'd be the DCR part. That way I can look up and see if an alias exists when somebody hits the space key. And of course, that's going to happen later on when the alias is being used. Which, if you scroll a little bit further down here, you should see something that looks like it might be promising. And that is the expand ealias. This widget is what I use to expand the ealias when you type the space key. And again, much of this involves a few advanced features that I don't want to talk about right now. The key is when you run that widget, I actually call a built-in widget here, ZLE and then _expand_alias. This exists inside of Z Shell itself and performs the alias expansion. So this feature actually exists inside of Z Shell. It's just that by default, when you hit the space key, it's not going to be triggered. And then speaking of binding to typing a space, if you scroll down here toward the bottom, there are some bind key calls. And this very first one says that when we're in Emacs mode, if a space is typed, then go ahead and call this widget. This is a wrapper widget. If I scroll up here, you can see here is the wrapper widget. And this one calls the expand ealias that we just took a look at up above. So this is how we go about the process of expanding when the user types a space. For example, over at the command line, DCR, the second I hit space, all that's invoked, and it expands out to Docker container run. And in this case, it uses -- name. Now, there's another key that's bound. If you come back to the code, there's one that's bound to accepting the line. So instead of just a space, if you hit return, well, in that case, if I did a DCPS and I hit the return key, I want to make sure that the alias expands first so I can always see what it actually refers to. And then right away, it runs the command after it expands it.